Well, today on Travelgate, I'm joined by Tom Pryor, the writer and star of the movie Firebird. Tom, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
And where are you in the world?
Right now, in Estonia.
Estonia. Why, is that where you live or?
Yeah, that's home for me now. As of I guess like the beginning of the COVID situation.
Nice. And what drew you to Estonia?
Well, firstly, it was shooting the movie Firebird. That was really kind of what I honestly hadn't really heard of the country like much before, and so then when I met the director Peter, I had sort of had this introduction to a script and a story, but also a an amazing country, which I can now say is my home.
Amazing. And Firebird is a beautiful movie. I was lucky enough to see it recently. Tell us a bit about your journey in terms of creating that, getting involved in that, and obviously ultimately starring in it.
Well, it kind of began back in, I guess, 2014, when I met Peter Rebane, the director, and he had a very early version draft of the script of the screenplay. It was actually based on a original but autobiography of Sergei Fetisov, who was a Russian actor, and um, we started discussing like this very early version of the script, and it instantly resonated with me because it ticked a lot of boxes. Like I love doing like military, like based war type theme films. When growing up, that's always been kind of like my genre of sort of like choice to watch, and sort of like Jason Bourne and James Bond and Tintin is all of kind of my era. And so here I was kind of also being presented with the opportunity to play a soldier, but also in the Soviet Union, which again is a sort of fascinating period of time in history. And so we decided to work together on a teaser for the film because the rest of the money actually for the film hadn't been raised. And so we decided to literally make three scenes to sort of industry or film level and then shoot it. And I just, from this very early version of the script, decided to just make a sort of few suggestions on how we might change the dialogue a little bit or how the narrative could be improved in these scenes. And so we had a very successful shoot, which lasted for several days. And then following that, I gave some very detailed, thorough notes about the rest of the script in the current state that it was. That really was the beginning of my engagement actually as the co-writer, and then we significantly changed the story, the research behind it, and sort of really bedded in both the sociological context and the sort of slightly political situation as well at the time, because Sergei Fetisov's original story is so amazingly moving and so passionate about the relationship. But when you read it, you would almost go, "How is this possible?" It didn't sort of set it in the context at the time because it's sort of written in hindsight. So that was really our job, and my job was really kind of coming in and bedding that in, and then changing up a lot of the dialogue and making it much more sort of like realistic and actually pulling it out a lot as well to kind of because the film is set in a time where there isn't a language for scaling these kind of relationships.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about the story. Obviously, it's a love triangle, and without giving away too much, you play one of the main characters who finds himself caught in that triangle.
Yeah, that's right. So um, loosely, I play the character of Sergei, who's a conscript finishing his final months of the sort of obligatory conscription that was at the time in the Soviet Union. And he kind of can't wait to get out of there. And he has his best friend, Louisa, who they kind of have this sort of unsaid, um, undiscovered curiosity for each other, particularly more on Louisa's side as well. And then when Roman, this new fighter pilot comes onto the base, this kind of sparks something in Sergei, and then there is an intrigue from Ramon towards Sergei, and then we kind of basically begin to scale this unfolding of curiosity and exploration, which happens with the backdrop of a military air force base at the height of the Cold War, and in the realm where same-sex relationships were. It's 5 years in a hard labor camp, and that pretty much meant that you weren't coming out of the hard labor camp. So it's kind of like really an exploration of how they walk that line, and set in this exciting backdrop. But I didn't want to give too much away.
How much of it is kind of rooted in fact then?
Well, a lot of it is written as an autobiography, because that's what Sergei Fetisov's story was. And during our writing process, we elaborated and extended his life to a degree, like in certain areas. But then we also wanted to remain as true as possible to his original script as well, his original story. So the relationship is based on very true, deep, sensual relations. The character of Louisa, actually, we took the liberty as screenwriters to make the female character much more sympathetic. In the original story, she's sort of depicted as sort of like a monster, and one of the main reasons why the relationship kind of happens to, without giving anything away, happens to come to where it goes to. And so we really wanted to actually like give a very equal voice to all three parties in this love triangle as much as we can. And then there was a lot of actually really placing it in the realm of the time. It was not like there was a homosexual witch hunt, let's say, going on at the time, but it was actually forbidden. And at the same time as well, it was not a thing in which anybody ever asked about. Yeah. Like people wouldn't have gone like, oh, are you? Like, that's just not it's not even on the card. So that was really interesting as well to put into the context, because again, in Sergei's book, the relationship happens in such a way that you're like, well, they didn't really seem to have almost any problems, which was kind of like the way which he recounted it and remembered the love, and that's what was so strong and so amazing. But yeah, to kind of build in the kind of thriller element to it, have a little bit of action in there as well. That's where we decided to elaborate.
And one of the things that struck me is a lot of LGBT films seem to throw in gratuitous sex scenes just to kind of tantalize the audience. And what I liked about Firebird is there's a lot of longing stares at each other, and that's how it starts. And then it obviously builds up to a bit more romance. But whilst there are sex scenes, none of them felt gratuitous to me.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's something we actually consciously did. Actually, as the filmmakers, when we interviewed Sergei, he sadly passed away actually during the process of us writing the film, which was terribly sad. And as an actor and a writer, to attend the funeral of the person that you're going to play in a film and extend their life of, that was pretty intense. But yeah, the sex scenes in the film, we made a very clear choice that we wanted to make them from a character basis. As you said, that sex scenes can be gratuitous because they kind of almost thrown in just because sometimes people just want to see it, or like people feel like you kind of have to have it. And so it was our job, and sort of my job and Peter's job as the screenwriters, to make it about love, which Sergei had asked us to do. He was like, please make this film about love, not about politics. And secondly, when we were actually on the film set, we decided to choreograph it in such a way that it felt more like a emergence coming together of souls, as opposed to let's say, the physical act. And I think that that's one thing that I have found from some films, is that it can be more unsympathetic and make it much more mechanical. And you know, let's be honest, wouldn't we all rather have an experience which is so much more meaningful and about this kind of soul's mergence together? So that's what we wanted to do. So that's very good to hear that you perceived that.
Well, you definitely achieved it. And obviously this film is set during the Cold War on a Soviet airbase in Estonia. Tell us a bit about, obviously, the reception it's receiving, because I know that you managed to get the film screened in Russia recently.
Yeah, so we applied to the Moscow International Film Festival, honestly never believing that we'd be accepted. We just thought, you know, they're going to be like, no way. And by some curious series of events, we were accepted, which we were actually thrilled about. And we were like, wow, there's actually then a lot more progression. You know, that's a real bold step for them to make, as the actual international film festival. And so we had 2 screenings put in, and the first one went ahead, and then the second one was kind of silenced. It was interesting that one other LGBT film actually at the film festival, a short film, was actually removed because it was based around that particular content. And as you know, there's a certain degree of laws which basically ban the promotion of homosexuality. And obviously that's kind of quite a interpretive term. And so we were, I think there was a letter sent to the state prosecutor's office to say that our film should be removed from the film festival after the first screening. And then we had some people protesting outside of the cinema, or actually on the second screening, saying that this shouldn't really go ahead. But, you know, fair enough, they didn't kick us out, but they also didn't let anybody in. So it was quite unfortunate to be silenced in such a way. And honestly, I was very surprised that, you know, it's a very real situation still right now in Russia. And, you know, for me, it's about getting to the point where we can just drop all of the conditioning and just go like, can't we just be all adult enough to just love who we love? Like, I actually don't understand the kind of the momentum which continues on just because of let's say tradition, or let's say, you know, a whole host of different reasons that could be. But anyway, so we were impressed and sort of flattered and moved that we were invited, and then we were saddened and disappointed when the film was blocked for the second part of the screening. So we hope that that's probably going to be the first and the last place that's going to happen.
Well, hopefully, and I think, you know, fingers crossed, even when things get blocked, it causes at least a kind of waterfall effect in terms of getting the message across to people that matters to. So there'll be people in Russia, LGBT people, who, you know, will just try to access this film, and that will hopefully have a positive impact on them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we actually did a sort of generous screening to the AIDS Foundation actually in Moscow like a few weeks back, and you know, the feedback we had there was people were very moved and also very impressed with actually how believable our replication of the Soviet Union had been, which I was honestly very glad to hear, because, you know, some of the criticism we got during the script stage even was that as a British actor, they were saying, why on earth are you putting Shakespeare into a Russian Soviet like movie around this era, and what's it got to do with it? And, you know, the reality was that actually in the 60s there were something like 300 different productions of Shakespeare going on in the Soviet Union, which I was fascinated to find out about. So there was sort of that link, and also the link with in Sergei's original manuscript, actually, almost every single chapter started with a quote from a Shakespeare play or a Shakespeare sonnet. So he was really, really a very strong Shakespeare fan.
And tell us a bit more about the film in terms of, obviously it's been screened at some film festivals now. What are the next steps for it in terms of international release?
So we're basically going to San Francisco at the end. Well, actually, I'm leaving tomorrow because we've got to do 2 weeks outside the EU to get into America. And yeah, then we'll have our North American premiere at Frameline Film Festival, which we're thrilled to have been invited to. And then we have a film festival confirmation at Durban as well. So South Africa will get a little bit of Firebird as well, which is nice at the film festival there, which we're very grateful to be invited to. And there's a few more film festivals on the cards. And then the plan really is to release around sort of November time, actually to the international market and to the international scene. And right now that's kind of, we're sort of figuring out whether that's going to be part theatrical or if it's going to go, mainly onto digital consuming, which seems to be the way that nearly everybody is consuming content now. But it would still be lovely to have like a few sort of theatrical runs in a few territories. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I think film and cinema has changed because of the pandemic, but that's not to stop us eventually getting back into the cinema and hopefully consuming content in that way again too.
For
sure. One of the reasons I came across you, Tom, in terms of my research, obviously seeing Firebird and then seeing you on Instagram and then seeing you do a live on Instagram in which you were talking about mindfulness and meditation. And it struck a chord with me because I thought there are not many people who've been in films out there who are trying to necessarily promote that image necessarily. So I thought it was different and unusual and actually quite nice in terms of being something unique. Tell us a bit about that and what got you into that kind of self exploration in terms of mindfulness and meditation.
Well, I guess like from a very young age, I've been very curious about things that you can't explain and things that are beyond our perception about what we can necessarily see. That and the combination of being quite sick when I was younger kind of led me to the curiosity to ask the question, is there more? And when I was actually shooting or about to shoot Firebird, I was well aware that I was going to be having incredibly long days, like 14 hours around on actually the film set, and then extending out to travel time, and then on top of that my physical training for the film as well, which kind of led to very, very long days and having to have a lot of stamina. And so I kind of really began my focused approach on using meditation as a tool to survive during the film shoot. And also, it's so interesting how acting mirrors life, and we are effectively having to make things look real, even though when you've been lying around a film set for 2 hours waiting for the lights to be fixed because they broke or something, and then you've got to go in and do your really emotional scene. So it's really about, for me, something that I've been very fascinated about was kind of finding that moment, or that moment of that place of flow, as well as kind of the importance of sustaining our mental health. So again, like I've become well aware through my experience that actually how you think and how you feel basically dictates your whole perception of your reality. And so when we can become aware of what we're thinking and what we're feeling, and then we can begin to consciously change that, if it's a reality that we're not necessarily very happy in, then that is honestly one of the most significant keys to life. And so I think that's why the word meditation pretty much means to become aware of. And so when, it was really, really wonderful actually to be asked these kind of questions, because this is something I'm very passionate about. And I think it's so important that, particularly in regards to the global pandemic, which we've had right now, is that we've had a lot of time by ourselves in the quiet, in almost like a retreat in our own home. We have to retreat back into our life, and face ourselves. And, meditation is a place where you can become aware of what's running on in the background, because without going too much into the sort of science behind it, but basically 5% of everything about your perception, who you are, is being run by your conscious mind, and 95% of it is being run by your unconscious. And in order to enter the area of the unconscious, we must basically shift our brainwaves into alpha, or basically into a lower brainwave state, so that we can begin to kind of make new decisions and changes. And that's for me, kind of going into operating system and beginning to change things. And if you don't like your reality, then it's time to change things. And meditation is literally one of the best ways you can do that. Of course, exercise, nutrition, and many other things as well. But meditation and medication are ironically only really but one letter away from each other.
Indeed. And I guess, a lot of people focus on their physical health, whether that's going down the gym and lifting weights, but don't necessarily have the toolkit to improve mental health. And I suppose meditation is, sort of like going down the gym, getting a weight out and flexing it on your bicep. Meditation is sort of doing the same on your brain.
Totally. I mean, it's also been scientifically proven that, they took groups of students at a university in America. I can't honestly remember which one it was, but they asked them to play the piano with one hand. So they took one group and they said, play the piano with your hand and practice for like 5 days. And by the end of it, let's see what happens. And they took another group and they basically said, do exactly the same thing, but only do it in your mind. Don't actually do it with your hands. And so just practice these keys in your mind. And then they took another group and they basically said, basically don't really do anything, but you're going to play it. And of course, what happens is that actually the middle group, who didn't actually do it with their physical body, actually had exactly the same parts of the brain light up, like it was a real experience, like the ones who actually were doing it physically with their hand. And this has been shown now time and time again that, you can train your muscles in your mind without even lifting anything. This has been scientifically proven by many, many researchers over and over again. So the power of the mind is epigenetically changing our body. Power of thought, power of placebo.
If someone's asking you kind of top tips for how to get into meditation, where to begin, what would those starting points be?
Just start. Honestly, that's one of the biggest things, is actually thinking about doing something and then going, I'll start tomorrow, or this and this. And that's kind of like the body's way of going yeah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to procrastinate, or we're waiting for the right time. It can be we're always kind of waiting for the right time. Haven't found the right app yet, haven't had the right environment yet, haven't got the time yet. You have to make time. I have to make time in my morning every day to meditate. And sometimes I'm just I don't have time for this, but if I don't do it, I can see the difference within my day significantly. And so I'd say that if you're curious about it, I can absolutely sort of recommend that one of the first sort of training wheels, as it were, that I still go back to this app as well, that I'd say to use is an app called One Giant Mind. And it's just the letter One Giant Mind. And it's a really great, fundamental and very accessible app. I have no affiliation with this whatsoever, and I think it's actually even free. But I say it's a very good training wheels for meditation, just to kind of get to that point where you just sit for 10 minutes with yourself and just have a little bit of something in the background, and just have to sit with yourself, because that's actually honestly the worst and hardest part of meditation, is people go like, oh, well, I can't meditate because my mind is just going like this and I can't sit with it. And the whole point is you have to sit in that fire. You have to. Like, it's not going to go away. You can't wait until the voices stop and then you're going to start meditating. That is the process of doing it. You have to let that voice run. And it's not to say that you have to engage with it, but you just have to kind of come an observer to that voice. But I know so many people who've said that like it's too hard and have time. But then those people who have engaged notice massive, massive changes in their life.
So even if someone can set aside just 10 minutes a day, you think it's a worthwhile process for them?
For sure. I mean, and also, you know, I'll throw this in here as well, but if you can take the latest research, which basically says that, like, if you are to meditate 2 to 3 times a day between 10 and 15 minutes and begin to practice raising your state of being, like, say, for example, you begin to feel deliberately the feelings of gratitude, you begin to feel deliberately the feeling of appreciation or love for life, or of just like being happy, just like for being happy, you literally raise your immunoglobulin A levels, like IgA levels, by 50% in 3 days. And that's better than any shot. That's all I'm going to say about that, but it's better than any shot. And so, like, really, like, that's what I'm saying is that this 10 to 15 minutes, even increments beginning like that, is so beneficial, like, for your health, for your mental health, just to have those moments. Like, I would go and do it when we were shooting the film. I would, like, just disappear. Like, sometimes I'd just go, I'm going to the toilet, and just sit in the toilet, sit on the toilet, but like with the seat down, with my headphones in, and just like just tune in and just let that noise like out, just to kind of like raise up and let it go, because all it needs, like, all this trail of thought needs is acknowledgement, because otherwise it just runs in the background and drives you mad. And so just to kind of like sit with that and just go like, okay, like, I'm not happy about this or this or this. It's so important, I think.
There's definitely a headline in there, Tom. I used to sit on the toilet and meditate, something like that, I think. In terms of, that whole kind of mindset people are in, obviously the pandemic's had a big impact on people, but especially in the LGBT community, there's a lot of people who feel pressured by social media, by the need to have a chiseled body image, all those kind of things, and that contributes to mental health. What are your views on that situation, and whether it's fine, what can be done to improve it, if you think it needs improving? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, we can all agree that the lockdown has been honestly a real bitch, like, in regards to like taking care of our health. I think also other people have sort of emerged from the lockdown in sort of the best shape of their life or whatever. But like, at the same time, I think the reality is that a lot of people were kind of quite demotivated by the fact that they couldn't get out and couldn't be physical. I know for sure that like like without the use of like significantly heavier weights, like, I watched my sort of muscle mass decrease a little bit. But this is a fascinating subject, which I could speak about like for hours, about kind of, this endless game which we're all on, and whether you want to play it or not, about how we look. And it's really, really hard right now, particularly because of activity levels of everybody has been messed with, and accessibility and convenience of things like food and routine as well. But it's difficult. You can scroll through Instagram and like pretty much everybody on your feed looks like, Adam or a fitness model or whatever it might be, and you're just going like, we are bombarded with these images the whole time, and every time you see that, subconsciously, whether you're noticing it actually consciously, but subconsciously, we are chipping away at ourselves. And so how we program ourselves with what we're looking at is something which I think more of us can become aware of doing? What are the images which serve us and make us like have more understanding and love and appreciation for ourselves, as opposed to comparing and judging and going, I'm not there yet. You know, the reality is that like I've been in incredibly good shape for the film for many times in my life, and you know I'm very grateful to say I'm in very, very good health. I'm very grateful for that. And when you present yourself to the world through social media to look a certain way, that's like putting a line in the sand and going, this is the way that I look. And that can then unravel to be very, very tricky in sustaining that as well. And so, you know, I was speaking to a friend of mine here the other day who's a personal trainer, and he said that, you know, he suffered at one point from anxiety to take off his shirt when around friends because he wasn't in the ripped shape which people have seen him in, like on social media or at a different point of his life. And then therefore was concerned that he would receive judgment because he's not in that same shape, which, let's face it, it's bloody hard to like keep in a certain shape. Like we have to be on a level of restriction. Now, how we choose to perceive that restriction like is also a perception choice in itself. You can either go, okay, I can't eat like, you know, sugar or carbs or, you know, whatever you want to choose it. Like if you want to be keto or you want to be vegan or what, animals or whatever, like we can create a limitation by going, I'm not allowed to have this. Or you can go, actually, I'm taking care and respecting myself by not having this, or by choosing to have that, or by going, I'm just going to eat the Mars bar and really enjoy it. Because honestly, the stress of all of these things, the body image and what we're eating and everything, will mean that if we eat something in stress or we work out in stress, the gene which basically produces the protein expression will print that protein in fear, in a state of fear. So you can eat all the healthy foods you want, or you can you know, run all your hours in the gym. But if you're in a state of fear, or if you're in a state of stress and anxiety, you'll be replicating like your gene expression through stress and fear. And unfortunately, the body won't change because it's in a state of survival. And like, so for example, when we talk about like body fat percentage, for example, most people think that you've got to go and like kill yourself in the gym or run until you're stressed and exhausted and a like dead pile on the floor. But actually what you're doing is when you raise your cortisol and your adrenaline and everything else so high, your body is going to hold on even more to that, to the fat deposits in the body, because the body thinks that it needs to hold it because it's survival. And so what's so curious is that, you know, people say that you lose fat when you sleep. And actually, honestly, like to a degree, half of that is true. If you have a really bad sleep, your body cannot process and relieve itself and repair and rebuild and acclimatize. And so it can kind of be worked into a very much more like sort of stressed out system where we're adrenally burnt out, we can't operate, and you know, it basically the body will hold on to more tissue as protection, as survival.
It's refreshing to
Sorry,
hear.
I can go about this forever.
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I think people listening or watching will also find it fascinating. I mean, it's refreshing to hear someone who obviously feels some pressure to you know, be in the shape that you're in because of the industry that you're in. I imagine that is a real pressure, and you're hyper aware of that pressure too.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The pressure is there, and I was speaking about it actually, honestly, with like friends recently, and just going, yeah. I mean, there's so many things I could say about this, but it's really like the most important thing is like to tend to our relationship to ourself. Like if we are happier feeling when we are in a leaner state, for example, like I know for sure that I just feel happier in my body because I can bounce around and do things and, swing on, bars or whatever. I feel happy when I'm like lighter, when I'm strong, and that's my job as well. Like I have to manage my physical body and my sort of, I'd say my chemical body, like my hormonal body on a daily basis. I have to eat the right kind of foods, but also equally with that, weigh up what creates health, and health is created really from happiness, from feeling what is going to be longevity. The reality is that like having incredibly low fat body percentage, for example, some people it's genetic, right? It's just some people just eat whatever the hell they want and their body just processes it. That is a reality. We can't do anything about that. Good luck and well done to them and all of their parents, and all the epigenetical like changes which literally that their families have had before them. It's something that they have done, their family has done. Maybe they've been very active as parents and grandparents. And so the genes are passed on, just like the genes are passed on in other ways. But it's also not to say that we can't change our gene expression, literally. And that's what epigenetics now tells us. But it's also to say that like what makes you happy, right? Like what makes you happy, like eating a certain way and just being aware of our relationship with food and with exercise. And you can drive yourself mad by doing things like counting calories or by how many steps you've done a day or whatever, and like everything is gamified now as well, right? And sometimes people are going mad if their rings on their Apple Watch are like not far enough down. So it's like technology, right? And phones and things like that, they're all made to help us, not to hinder us. So we have to watch that line about going like, okay, the watch tells me I'm not active enough or whatever. Like these things are here to aid us. They're not here to drive us. Let's not get taken over by the machines.
Yeah, chastised by your Apple Watch is
exactly.
A lot of people feel, right? But obviously, the industry you're in, like I mentioned, there is a lot of pressure to look good. And let's be honest, there's still a mentality in the world that sex sells, that body image sells. Do you think we'll ever get away from that? Do you think there'll be a kind of, I don't know whether it's a renaissance perhaps, of that not being the case, or do you think we're too far down that path now to retreat?
I would never say we're too far down any path. That's just like my way of looking at things. Yeah, I mean, we have a similar situation right now with our film, for example. Fame sells and sex sells, like body image, like and things like. I mean, everybody knows you put like a photo showing more flesh on Instagram, suddenly you've got more likes. You put a photo about, looking after your mental health, and like some people are actually like very responsive, and other people are like, well, who cares? And image is a hugely strong driving factor. But I think that the change will come when we make our priority on that change, on being that change and taking care of each other, and not getting to the point of judgment. I think I remember like reading in the media, like, I don't know, I think it was last year or the year before, and like, a whole lot of people were giving like Zac Efron a real load of shit because he's not in the same shape that he was in during Baywatch. And I'm like, give the dude a break. Like, if you try and retain, like, I don't know what he was on, but like 8% body fat or something, like your whole life, like you'll die, like you'll actually die. So like, we need to be a little more understanding with each other, but at the same time, being like people who are famous are under that scrutiny the whole time. But at the same time, they are just as much like human as we are, and just need this as much like compassion. And I think that when we celebrate ourselves for how we feel in our happiness, when we are our happiness, when we are our happiness, then, and we make that a priority, then these kind of other things sort of fall away. When you kind of just go like, I just feel so good or so full of love or so grateful that these things kind of don't really matter so more, then we stop comparing, then we stop judging, then we stop competing, then we stop doing all of these things. And so I believe there is absolutely a way to change, but everybody individually has the responsibility to be that person that they want to fall in love with, be that person that they want to not be as a judgmental person, because, you know, it's like for like. The love you give is the love you receive. The judgment you give will be the judgment you receive. And that would be honestly like my message in how to sort of change and switch this up a little bit is not being Michael Jackson about this, but be the change. Like, be the change. Like, if you're looking for a partner, if you're looking for somebody in love and you're not in a relationship right now, start acting like that person that you want to attract into your life, because they'll come to you. They'll find you. You will find it. But if you're just kind of constantly in a place of judgment or a constant place of being like stuck or just like annoyed or judgmental, then you'll just get met with more of that. So if there's an aim, it would be, let's have a little bit more compassion for each other, right? Let's have a little bit more compassion and just go like, yeah, sure, bodies change and people change and hair color changes and skin changes.
I think
it's like, really, it's like, what do you want?
Your Instagram, I think, has done a nice combination of the two, which is, you know, that you're going to game the Instagram algorithm by posting a topless picture, but then in the caption you've got something quite deep and meaningful about mental health, or, you know, furthering yourself, or whatever that is.
Yeah, that's me just playing the system.
Play that.
And honestly, I really, really genuinely hope that like there is an activation which happens from reading the content which is behind the pictures. That is a very honestly conscious and deliberate effort to have people read and engage in the material. You know, like, let's also, if people are in great shape, like, let's celebrate it. But at the same time, you know, like the reasons that you know, the message and the eyeballs and the attention carries responsibility. And it is like our responsibility, when having like high levels of engagement, or not even for that matter, of how we are and who we are in the world. And really, again, that's something I'm grateful that you picked up on, because it's something that's incredibly important to me. I have suffered miserably through you know, criticism of self-image, particularly when I was younger. I've suffered miserably from like depression and mental health, like certainly in my earlier years. But I have mastered on, and I have seen, like, you know, the other side of that, and the other side of that is stunning. And I really, really like deeply hope that I can help other people see that side.
How did you have that kind of realization that, you know, what you talked about, depression and mental health there? How did you have that realization that it didn't have to be like that, and there was alternative ways of dealing with things?
There was a significant moment, actually, like in I think like my mid-20s, or early mid-20s, where I remember speaking on the phone to my mom when I was really depressed. And she said, you're just going to have to get used to the fact that this is a lifelong illness. And I said, no. I said, no, I reject that. Sorry, but I reject that. I was like, I do not believe that this has to be the way that the rest of life has to be. And it was in that moment, it's in those decisions that we make where we go, enough is enough of the suffering, enough of the pain, enough of the struggle, that things begin to change. It's the same thing that happens with chronic health conditions or injuries, or which have gone on for very, very long times. It's that moment where somebody makes a decision and they go, this is not my destiny anymore. And it is kind of in those moments where, honestly, sometimes things have to get so bad, they have to get chronic, or they have to get really, really bad in order to punch through and that momentum to go, I'm done. Like I'm done. And like there must be another way. And like for me, that was one of those moments. There have been quite a few of those moments in my life, but this is like one example where I was just like, no, enough. And that has led me on quite a long journey into discovering all the richness and wealth of practices that are out there, whether it's meditation or breathing or the approach of nutrition or gut biome or, like the amount of resources that are now available to us to help us heal, to help us be a better person, to bring more life into our body again, into our meaning into our life, is just like, wow. But sometimes you can't force that process. You have to be in that darkness or that frustration or pain and feel out the message to then go, okay, enough. I know what I want to do now. But it's the contrast. I actually really honestly believe that contrast is very important in life. And I can say that now because I've just come out of one, that I'm like I actively meditate pretty much every day, but sometimes you're like, I didn't want to meditate today. This is the last thing I want to do. And those are the days that you need to meditate.
Mm-hmm. And without wanting to cast aspersions, someone might be listening to this or watching this and getting all cynical and being like, oh, it's easy for him to say that, he stars in movies and, I'm sure he's got access to a world of information that a lay person doesn't. But I suppose there is a kind of self-starter attitude required to get yourself out of that. But you need, I'm guessing, a catalyst to do that. And maybe it's that hitting rock bottom, right?
Yeah. And honestly, like, again, speaking very honestly, it's not a fun place to be at all. It's really not. And it's been honestly like really dark at times. But what I've learned is that from that darkness comes a huge lightness on the other end of it. But you have to sit in it and go through it. And you just don't give up. Like, I mean, I remember, for example, when I went to drama school, I had to raise £16,000 in 3 months to pay for my tuition because it was a private course at RADA. And I was met over and over and over again by people going, what are you going to do if you don't get the money? What are you going to do if you don't get the money? What are you going to do? And I was like, it's not an option. I was like, it's just not an option. And they said, well, what if you get half the money and you don't get the rest of it? And you can't. I was like, I'm literally not even engaging in that energy. I was like, I'm not engaging in that being a possibility. The only possibility is that I go. And I got the money and more, like by writing to people and organizing a whole list of events and running acting masterclasses for kids and doing sponsored runs and bingo nights and all kinds of things. And I did it. I just like mad behavior of like writing to the CEO of the company that I was working for at the time, and had like the most amazing support in the end. But it's the same thing as that kind of going, I could have just gone like, well, that's just not possible. Or we believe in possibility and we change. So really for me, I can absolutely see like from the outside somebody going like, oh yeah, it's absolutely fine for him to say, but like, trust me, I've been through the darkness, but through that darkness, you just don't stop. You just keep on going. And that's the most important thing. You just keep on going, keep on going, keep on going.
Let's move on from that darkness into the light before we get too trapped in it. You've talked to me previously about your love of writing and how you want to showcase more authentic relationships and love on screen. What's that process looking like, and how do you hope to achieve that and make that change?
I'm so fascinated by relations which we can't box into what it is, as in like the sort of like emergence of a unexpected relationship forming between two people or three people or whatever it might be. And it's sort of like surprising relationships or kind of like mentor and mentee kind of like relationships or something like that. But I'm fascinated to Robert Mapplethorpe, the photographer, said very well, I want to see something I've never seen before. And for me, if filmmaking and writing in that matter is really kind of like the same for me. It's like I want to see something I haven't seen before in an original way. And there's a number of different projects that I'm independently kind of putting together to sort of as writing projects right now as potential new films. And they're about quite exposing material to do with extrasensory perception, for example, and what people can do with the power of their mind. And then also, the relations that kind of come into that, people being incredibly skeptical and then having an experience and then actually being much less skeptical after having the experience and then convincing others that actually it's real. And, then also military-based relations as well. For example, in the Navy SEALs, it's fascinating to see how like a group of Navy SEALs goes through a training in which they kind of become a oneness. They don't have to communicate almost with each other at all verbally. It's like they kind of spend so much time together and go through such a grueling time that they become this sort of one emergent sort of like being. There's kind of relations like that, which I really want to see being brought to screen. Like I honestly am just kind of a bit done with just seeing like suffering and misery and alcoholism and drug abuse. And it's not to say that these aren't important issues, but it's like saying, like, for me as a filmmaker, I want to see something I haven't seen before.
And what is that something you haven't seen before? It's I guess loads of different things, right? Blank canvas there.
There's quite a blank canvas. I don't want to go too much into what I'm writing right now before it's kind of more fruition. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly going to be tapping into the themes of sort of almost superhuman skills that we all have and that are latent within our DNA, and about activating those. So low people such as ourselves can have the access to, be able to remote view, for example. Remote viewing being sort of basically being able to place your attention in a time or space, or no time or space, and be able to basically report on what is there, for example. That's like, say, like, yeah, that's like one example, but I'm not going to get into any more about that.
No, because keep that one up your sleeve, and we can talk about that another time. Let's talk travel. That's what our company is all about. Talk to me a bit about some of the favorite places you've been to. I'm assuming you've traveled quite a bit in your career. Where stands out to you?
Well, the first place that kind of comes to my mind is, as a place that was just like outstanding and so very different, was Bhutan. I went to Bhutan several years ago with a friend who, she founded a very big and important company in the fashion industry, and then sort of has a lot of foundations there now, and was lucky to meet some very interesting people there. But I was so moved by the gross national happiness index that they have there, for example. So that it's one of like probably the only countries on earth which actually measures the gross national happiness of their citizens. And it was just such an amazingly beautiful country. And, there was a real respect to their dress and attire and the way they present themselves to the outside world. It's still actually kind of quite a difficult country to get into. They actually were kind of not even open to tourism, I think, until like the early 2000s or something. And still right now, I think there's a certain criteria you have to get even to get into the country. But we managed to get away in there through her philanthropy. Bhutan has been amazing. Is a really, really dear place in my heart. And then I also really enjoyed Namibia when I was there. It's so very beautiful. And, sand dunes, which just go on for hundreds of miles into a distance. And it really kind of makes you feel how vulnerable we are actually as a sort of human life form. standing in the middle of the desert, which just goes on forever and ever and ever. And, you know, no help is coming to run over the hill anytime soon. If if you get a flat tire, as I did, or you know, you have some sort of medical sort of situation happen. But I mean, this is so a staggeringly beautiful country. Yeah, those are the sort of first two that jumped to my mind.
And then if those are interesting destinations, ones that some people might go, oh, not one on my bucket list. Where's on your bucket list that you haven't yet been to?
That's a really good question. I mean, I've been very lucky to travel to many, many places. There's definitely places that I also love to go back to. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work in Iceland. I love Iceland so very dearly. It's such an amazing country. The people are just so wonderful and friendly, and it's just outstanding. But somewhere where I haven't been but want to go would be,
have you been to Antarctica yet?
Yeah, I have actually.
Oh,
yeah.
see, tip on that.
Yeah, I was actually there on a ship when the COVID crisis hit.
Wow.
And we didn't have connection to the outside world. And so when President Trump closed the US and the riots began in Italy, we got actually one news bulletin through to the ship about 5 days before we landed. And it was like, wow, the world that we left is now looking like the end of Kingsman, the Secret Service or something. It's sort of like gone into sort of apocalypse. So it was kind of mad, honestly, to like leave one society and come back to a whole nother reality. But Antarctica was astounding. Like I was there actually, I was very grateful to be there for about 32 days, like doing a very long trip. And the quietness and the innocence of the wildlife down there, of like penguins, for example, was just like
living their best life.
Penguins who were just like pretty much never seen humans are just so trusting and just like curious, unlike most other animal species on Earth who are just like humans.
Yeah. And I suppose one of the other things is, you know, when it comes to travel, all of us have to be conscious of where we travel to, and especially in the LGBT community, there are lots of places where it's illegal to be gay. Do you think that your movie will in some way have an impact on that for people in those countries where it is more difficult to be LGBT?
Oh, I do hope so. I really, really do hope so. There's just so much intolerance which still exists, which just honestly is very surprising. We have so many more acute issues in the world right now. You know, people are still dying of starvation and sort of like not actually being able to access like proper water properly. And yet there is, you know, death penalties in countries for falling in love with the person that you love with. Like, and let's face it, like nobody would choose that experience for themselves. So like nobody would choose to fall in love with somebody who, by being in love with that person, invariably will get them killed, or basically being told by the state they live in that that's like the end of your life. I mean, it's honestly to me still so astonishing that we can't just get over this. Like, let's just get it over with. Like, let's just let people like be in love. Like, because that's what we're talking about at the end of the day. Fundamentally, we're talking about love. Like, there's so many other issues to deal with. Let's just drop that one. But yeah, I really do hope that, you know, again, we made Firebird with the intention of it being about love, not about politics. And so if we can allow people to sense, even an inkling of that feeling, that go like, oh yeah, I've had that, or I know what that's like, or cause a little bit more understanding within somebody who, for example, maybe has a son or a daughter in the LGBT community who, as a parent, has been very intolerant of. And then, for example, seeing our film, they go like, wow, okay, it's about love. We kind of quite consciously wanted to make the film about love between two people, or three people, but love between two people, not necessarily two males, or not necessarily a man and a woman, but actually just going, this is what love feels like, and let's just move on, because otherwise it ends in tragedy and misery, and it's kind of unnecessary now.
Amazing. Tom Pryor, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for talking to Travelgate, and we look forward to Firebird and its general release.
Thanks so much.